Super Rugby AU is done and dusted. It was a really good competition. Sad to see it go, but the Brumbies are the final winners, so congratulations to the Brumbies. I think overall we saw enough talent in this competition to be pretty optimistic for the future Aussie rugby. I'll go through 15 players who I thought played particularly well, and I'll have to go through a few honourable mentions because I certainly haven't got enough room to include everybody. I have done this one solely on gut feeling rather than going and looking up all the stats, which is unlike myself, but sometimes it is nice, I guess, to just shoot from the hip. So we'll start with some front rowers. And loose head, I've gone with the Rebels man. I've gone with Cameron Orr. I thought he came along pretty well, didn't he? He had a pretty good season. Scrummaging's good. Work around the park is good. And yeah, I think that's encouraging. He's not made the Wallabies squad, but I don't actually. How old is Cameron Orr? Should I check now? I checked. He's 25. 25 is not old for a prop, man, so he's still got plenty of development to come. And yeah, overall, thought he had a pretty bloody good season. Hooker, I went with Falau Faenga, Wallabies player. The back of that Brumbies pack. Now, admittedly, their scrum, I've been harping on about it, I don't think was still that flash, but their maul was flash, and I think he scored like 4 tries. Don't mean to be looking up stats, but yeah, 4 tries at the back of that maul. Yeah, I think he's got to be the incumbent, doesn't he, for that Wallabies job? Do you rate him above Ulysses and like paying Amosa right now? Above Horton? I think you probably do. And the last one, I've gone probably a pretty obvious choice. Is Taniela Tupou. And that's kind of nice that you got a Rebel, a Brumby, and a Red. So it's not one particular front row that gets all the kudos. I mean, Tupou was just immense in this competition. Played like 70 odd minutes each week, carrying the ball hard, and yeah, just causing absolute havoc. Putting in some big hits as well. Maybe his work rate upped a little bit. I don't know if it was the big extended break. He had a bit of an appetite for it, but and his discipline, I think it was a bit poor at the start of the comp, but did maybe slowly get better. That's probably the biggest weakness in his game, and it's not necessarily a technical thing. It's maybe a mental thing that he just sometimes has a bit of a brain explosion and just is prone to giving away silly penalties. But yeah, pretty tidy looking front row, I reckon. Next, locks. And I've gone with a Force guy. And it was maybe tough to justify picking Force guys given they didn't win a game. Is it just me? Because he didn't get anywhere near. He didn't get the players in national interest, didn't get the Wallabies. But Fergus Lee Warner, I'll have to have a look at his stats after this at some point. Because he just seems to be everywhere. He scores tries. He makes loads of tackles. He can play lock, loose forward. I think he played 5 games lock, 3 games blindside. Like, there's another lock loose forward who did get selected for the Wallabies, who plays for the Waratahs, who I don't know is quite as good as him. He's like 1.98 m. He's a big fella, huge work rate. Maybe his off-the-ball stuff isn't quite up to scratch. I don't know. But I thought he was pretty bloody immense, man. I thought he was probably the best player for the Force. But what can I say? I like guys who make heaps of tackles. It's just a thing. And the other lock, I think you go with Matt Phillip. I think it's weird. With the exodus of locks from Australia, you lost Arnold, and Rodder decided to take up an offer outside Australia, and Skelton being overseas and whatnot. There's been a bit of a void, and Matt Phillip's been around the shop for quite some time, but I feel like with a few other guys as well, he properly stepped up during the AU season. Like, there are some guys who perhaps were better before the AU season, before the lockdown, and didn't quite live up to that pre-lockdown form, whereas others absolutely stepped up. And I feel like Matt Phillips, why he's a big hard ball carrier and does all the regular locking stuff that you would expect. He can win line-out ball, he can clean out and whatnot. So yeah, he's I think going forward potentially going to be a pretty key cog. in Dave Rennie's side, but it depends who he calls back from overseas, because like I said, there are a few good Wallabies locks based abroad. Number 6, I've gone, because he mostly played 6, even though he seems more like a 7, the Reds captain Liam Wright. Turnover specialist, huge work rate, tackle specialist, not a traditional big old blindside, but if the Wallabies want to play a similar thing that they had with the Pooper when it was Michael Hooper and David Pocock, you've got a pretty fine replacement for the Pocock side of it in Liam Wright. I don't know what that makes it if it's Wright and Hooper. The Whooper, I don't know. It could be a thing. Literally just thought of that off the top of my head. What's another way it could be? The Wright doesn't work as well. I think the Whooper works better. But yeah, man, he's only young as well. Very, very tidy player, man. At some point, I'm going to look at the stats, but gut feeling says tackles, turnovers, and ball in hand stuff not bad. Speaking of ball in hand stuff not bad, I've gone with Pete Samu from the Brumbies. Now, number 8 is one I really would have liked to look at the stats, to be honest, to make a judgment call. Gut, I've gone with Samu. Mainly because even when the Brumbies looked bad, I thought Samu still looked pretty good. Like in that game against the Reds before, like the last game of the regular part of the tournament, Brumbies looked pretty poor. But Samu, just popping my finger on my marker for some reason, fidgeting. Samu still looked good. Still look good. He doesn't have a huge work rate like some of the other guys who play number 8, but it's good enough. And what he can do with ball in hand is maybe a touch above some of the other guys. They've all got their special skills. I'll get to some honorable mentions in a bit. But Pete Samu, number 8. And this is maybe going to be like the Sam Cane choice for Super Rugby Aotearoa, which people didn't appreciate. But Michael Hooper, I honestly think without the burden of captaincy on that Waratahs team, I think he played a bit better. And it's a similar story to Liam Wright, which is why I reckon if they are going to do that similar style with a couple of guys who are going to make themselves nuisances at the breakdown, I think it could work. But again, it's at the price of a proper, like, Jerome Kaino style blindside. But if you've got Samu there, who's a very capable guy at line-out time, at least you've got that option there as well. But yeah, Hooper tackles, man. Tackles, turnovers. Maybe not as many turnovers as Wright. I'd like to look at the numbers, but I feel like not quite as many. And yeah, just generally running the pill. Pretty busy work for a Waratahs team that didn't do that well. They only missed out slightly. But yeah, I do feel like without the burden of captaincy, he was freed up just to go and have a bit of fun. But yeah. Number 9 was a pretty easy choice, I think, in the end. Affectionately nicknamed Haircut by the people who attend the live streams. Tate McDermott, man. He's still not a complete player. Like, he doesn't quite have, as people have mentioned in the comments before, he doesn't quite have like that crisp pass like someone like maybe Aaron Smith. But that can be improved, and he's just got such an eye for a gap, man. He keeps defenders absolutely on their toes. You never know when he's going to make a sniping run. He can kick, he can score tries. He is an absolute live wire. Even when he looks when he moves out to the wing, he looks dangerous. So yeah, Tate McDermott, I think, has got Wallaby gold written all over him, and yeah, it's gonna be much deserved. 10. I've gone with James O'Connor, who by my own admission I was pretty doubtful of at the start of the season. I thought, man, James O'Connor, he's a utility. You can play him at 15, you can play him on the wing. I don't know that he's quite got the nous to play 10, but I think he did. At the start of the Super Rugby AU season, they didn't even really trust him with the goal kicking, if my memory serves. They played Hegarty at fullback and let him do the goal kicking. But no, even Jock was doing that by the end, and yeah, he led his team to a final. Couldn't quite get it done, but I thought at 10, he was doing a pretty respectable job. 12, I've gone with another Brumbie. I've gone with Ire Simone. And as I mentioned earlier about guys who really stepped up when I was talking about Matt Phillip, I think this guy's another one. Probably the best I've seen him play, most consistent I've seen him play for the Brumbies since I've seen him playing. He's always been a bit hot and cold, but he seemed really, really consistent and just dangerous. He was able to distribute well. I don't know that he took the ball to the line as much as maybe some of the other 12s, but yeah, I think he outshone most of the other guys. Billy Meeks was a bit hot and cold. I shouldn't be getting to other players now, but on his own, Simone I thought was pretty bloody good. Other guy, this is a kind of a cheat. This is a cheat because he was injured and he ended up playing the outside backs at sometimes, but I wanted to get Jordan Pataya in there somewhere because he had a pretty good season. When he came back from injury, and geez, he's injured at the end of the season. I'm still waiting to see what the prognosis is on him. But man, he's dangerous. His partnership with Stewart in the midfield was kind of perfect because Stewart has proved himself, again in this AU season, talk about guys stepping up, to be very defensively capable. He's not that big, but man, he can make tackles and he can cut down some pretty big guys. I think in the final, he kept Kurandrani quiet a couple of times. But Pataya is just offensively, like, just dangerous. What else can I say? He's just sharp. He finds gap where there's no gaps. He's got pace. He can inject all kinds of offense into that Reds game. And yeah, man, the guy just needs to bloody stop getting injured. Had to fit him in somewhere. Next, I've gone with another Red. I've gone with Filippo Daugunu on the left wing. And I think he was good the whole season, but potentially raised this game throughout the thing as well with his goose steps, with his pace. Defensively, his numbers from memory were pretty solid. I know Fijian wingers sometimes get criticised, like the stereotype being that they're quick and can't defend, but I thought his defensive numbers were really good. And yeah, that goose step of his, man, is a thing of beauty when he puts it on. Fullback, I went with, and this was a tough pick. This is maybe influenced by the final. Tom Banks. Because I thought Tom Banks, he had a slow start to the season, to be honest. But he had a good end to the season, and it's the end of the season that's more fresh in my memory. I think he had niggling injuries from what people said. But yeah, by the time I saw him in that final, I thought, yeah, he should probably be the Wallabies starting 15. Which is what's got him in here. If he's fit, man, he's quick. He's got a decent step on him as well. Big old boot. He's got a funny kicking style at times, but a big old boot. Doesn't matter how you kick him as long as they get the distance. So I put him there at 15. And I've kind of had to shift this man, Marika Korobidi. Hard to write on the whiteboard at that angle. Korobidi over to the right wing because I thought he was also a live wire. There were times when the Rebels' attack looked shockingly disorganised and poor. And you give him the ball, he just makes 10 metres. Sometimes he was almost like an extra loose forward, man. The way he would just carry into contact and always get over the advantage line. So, yeah. Marika and Filippo could also be a potential Wallabies wing combo, but we'll have to wait and see. That's my 15 guys. Pretty tough, like I mentioned, and I think I cheated in a few places. Other guys who are worth the mention, a couple of props. Harry Johnson-Holmes for the Tars was very, very good, and he deserves his Wallaby call-up. Pone Fa'amusili also, man, that guy is just a joy to behold. Him and Tupou as your two tight heads. Job done. I know that means somebody else has to miss out, but for pure enjoyment factor, it'd be nice if it was those two guys. Other hookers, I thought Horton for the Tars was solid. His call-up for the Wallabies is a bit of a bolt. Reedy for the Force, who was historically one of my most disliked players, I thought was very good as well. Salakai Loto was great for the Reds. I struggled with that position, but there we go. I left him out. Trevor Hosea for the Rebels also looks like a really good prospect, so look forward to see more of him. Back rowers, there's just so many to name. Harry Wilson, probably a better work rate than Pete Samu, but without the hands. And he's one I thought was probably more dangerous before lockdown. Again, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. But yeah, still very good, man. McCright as well. You guys are blessed with guys who can pinch the ball in Australia. Hardwick I also thought was pretty good. He's with a nod. Nasarani, his running game is still there, even if he didn't quite make the Wallabies. There's others as well. Even Simmons, to be honest, the lock, I thought had a best few games that I've seen from him in a long time. Scrum halves, Jake Gordon, I thought was back to the form that I used to like seeing him in. And all three of the Brumbies guys. Lonergan had a few good games. Powell had some good games. Nick White, when he came back, had some good games as well. So, yeah, there seems to be plenty of depth in that position as well. Lolosio and Will Harrison. Like, when Bernard Foley left Australian Rugby, there was no real obvious choice for 10. Now you've got a couple of experienced guys, like Tamua, if he plays 10, and O'Connor, and then you got two really hot, like, flash young players, and Harrison with his radar boot, and Lolosio in the final man of the match after a huge layoff. Speaks really well to what's happening in Aussie rugby. Midfielders, Paisami I thought was really good. Godwin had some good games for the Force as well. He didn't quite make the Wallabies either. Outside backs, Tom Wright. Reece Hodge was a bit of a jack of all trades. I didn't put him in because he kind of played all over the shop as well. Jack Maddox was a bit of a hot and cold guy at times. He was phenomenal some games and a bit average the others. Campbell, heaps of good players, man. Good stuff. Yeah. What do you guys reckon? Super Rugby AU Dream Team for the season. Who are you giving it to? There's plenty of choices, like I said. I reckon he might get a bit of stick in the comments because, yeah, that just seems to be a thing. Banks is one I could understand a bit of criticism for, seeing as, like I said, he probably finished the season pretty well without necessarily starting that well. Let me know your thoughts on Lee Warner as well, because I honestly think he was hard done by, but he is what I will check the numbers for. I'm willing to go through and trawl through those game results to see his numbers were. 17 minutes, I better call this quits. Do me one quick favor. If you were watching from Australia, when you watched the Super Rugby AU games, let me know if you were watching on Foxtel or if you were watching on KO. I'm just kind of curious to see what the ratio is like between Foxtel and KO based on some recent stuff I'm reading. Totally unscientific poll. But if you were Foxtel or KO, do let us know in the comments as well. But yeah, otherwise, let me know your guys' thoughts. Who would you have in? Who would you not? And I suppose if you guys ever want to buy me a beer, I'll put a link for that one in the description as well. But you guys take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.